been trying to think your way into your next level, planning, strategizing, consuming content, asking for signs. But what if the breakthrough you're chasing can only find you in the one place you've been avoiding? Silence. Not the silence of giving up, the silence of becoming. Sacred silence isn't emptiness. It's the womb of transformation. And your next level won't arrive in the noise. It's waiting for you in the quiet you've been too afraid to enter. We live in a world that has convinced us that constant motion equals progress. That if you're not posting, building, networking, learning, optimizing, you're falling behind. Silence feels like stagnation. Solitude feels like loneliness. And so you fill every gap. Podcasts while you walk, music while you work, scrolling before sleep. You've been taught that stillness is the enemy of ambition, but here's the truth they don't tell you. The noise isn't keeping you informed, it's keeping you distracted, and the distraction isn't accidental, it's strategic. Because a person who never stops consuming never starts creating. A person who never stops moving never discovers where they're actually trying to go. You say you want clarity, but you won't sit with confusion. You say you want intuition, but you won't unplug long enough to hear it. You say you want transformation, but you keep choosing the comfort of the familiar loop. Check the phone, respond to the message, refresh the feed. Ask someone else what you should do. You're outsourcing your inner knowing to algorithms and opinions. And every time you do, you fracture your connection to the one voice that actually knows the way, your own. Think about the last time you sat in complete silence for more than 5 minutes. No music, no podcast, no task to complete. Just you and the hum of your own presence. Can you even remember? Most people can't. Because silence has become uncomfortable. It brings up everything you've been avoiding. The doubts you've been outrunning, the grief you've been postponing, the questions you've been drowning out. Silence doesn't give you answers immediately. First, it hands you everything you've been hiding from yourself. And that's exactly why it's sacred. The mystics knew this. The philosophers understood it. Every spiritual tradition across time and culture points to the same practice. Solitude, contemplation, the desert, the cave, the mountaintop, not as punishment, as preparation. Jesus spent 40 days in the wilderness before his ministry. Buddha sat beneath the Bodhi tree until enlightenment arrived. Muhammad retreated to the cave of Hira. Moses climbed the mountain alone. These weren't coincidences, they were requirements. Because transformation doesn't happen in the crowd. It happens in the crucible of your own company. Your next level requires you to go where no one else can follow. Inward. But here's what you need to understand. Sacred silence isn't about running away from the world. It's about remembering who you are without it. You've spent so long performing, proving, protecting your image that you've forgotten what you actually feel, what you actually want, what actually lights you up when no one's watching. You've confused your persona with your person, and the distance between the two is costing you everything. Your energy, your clarity, your power. Because you can't build an authentic life on a foundation of borrowed beliefs. And you can't hear your soul's whisper when the world is shouting in your ear. Carl Jung said it plainly. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. If this message resonates with you, subscribe to the channel and join a community of awakened souls walking the same journey of spiritual alignment. Most people spend their entire lives dreaming, reacting to external circumstances, chasing external validation, measuring their worth by external metrics, followers, likes, promotions, possessions, and then they wonder why nothing ever feels like enough. Because they're building on sand, they're decorating a house with no foundation. They're trying to fill an inner void with outer noise. And it never works. It can't work. Because the void isn't asking for more, it's asking for presence, for attention, for you to finally stop running and turn around. Sacred silence is the act of turning around. It's the moment you stop asking the world to tell you who you are and start remembering on your own. It's the pause between reaction and response, the space between stimulus and choice, the gap where your actual power lives. Because in that gap, you're not controlled by conditioning. You're not hijacked by emotion. You're not puppeteered by past patterns. You're awake, and awakeness is the only place transformation can actually take root. Imagine a seed buried in soil, surrounded by darkness, covered in weight. If that seed could think, it might panic. It might believe it's trapped, forgotten, buried alive. But the darkness isn't a prison, it's an incubator. The silence isn't emptiness, it's preparation. And the pressure isn't punishment, it's the force that will eventually crack the shell so the sprout can emerge. Your seasons of silence feel like setbacks because you're measuring them by external metrics. But nature doesn't grow in public, it grows in the dark, in the quiet, in the unseen depths where roots strengthen and foundations form. And then, when the time is right, the breakthrough happens, not because you forced it, because you allowed it. This is the part most people miss. They think silence is passive. They think solitude is withdrawal. They think stepping back means giving up. But sacred silence isn't passive. It's the most active thing you can do. Because in the silence, you're not avoiding the work. You're doing the deepest work there is, the work of integration, of digestion, of alchemizing everything you've experienced into wisdom. You've been filling your cup without ever drinking from it, consuming insight after insight without ever embodying a single one. And now your system is overloaded, overstimulated, short-circuiting. You don't need more information, you need integration. And integration doesn't happen at the speed of content, it happens at the speed of silence. Think of your mind like a snow globe. Constant motion keeps everything swirling. Ideas, worries, plans, opinions. You can't see clearly because nothing ever settles, but when you stop shaking it, when you finally set it down and step back, the particles begin to fall, slowly, gently, and suddenly you can see the path forward. The pattern you've been repeating, the fear you've been feeding, the truth you've been avoiding. Clarity doesn't come from adding more. It comes from subtracting the noise and letting what's real rise to the surface. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journals, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." Not a vacation, not a monastery, not a perfect external condition, your own soul, the place you've been abandoning in favor of everyone else's version of you. He knew that the world would always be chaotic, that circumstances would always be unpredictable, that other people would always have opinions. But your inner realm, that's your sanctuary, your fortress, your source, and you've been leaving it unguarded, letting every notification, every headline, every passing thought march right in and set up camp. Sacred silence is the act of reclaiming your inner territory, of saying, not everything gets access to me, not every voice gets a vote, not every impulse gets to run the show. Neuroscience backs this up. Your brain has two primary networks. The task-positive network, active when you're focused outward, doing, performing, reacting. And the default mode network, active during rest, reflection, and daydreaming. This is where insight happens, where creativity sparks, where your brain makes connections it couldn't make in action mode. But here's the problem. Most people never activate it anymore because they never rest, never reflect, never daydream. They've trained themselves to stay in task mode 24/7, and then they wonder why they feel stuck, why they can't think clearly, why they've lost touch with their intuition. Because intuition doesn't shout over the noise, it whispers in the stillness, and if you're never still, you'll never hear it. To celebrate your arrival, we've prepared a gift, a guide to help you navigate your inner transitions with clarity and elegance. Alignment. 7 Phases of Consciousness Awakening. Download your copy from the link in the description. Your next level isn't hiding on the other side of more effort. It's waiting on the other side of more presence, more listening, more trust. You've been approaching growth like a war: attack, push, force, conquer. But growth doesn't work that way. Growth is biological, organic, cyclical. It requires seasons, expansion and contraction, output and rest, yang and yin. You can't bloom year-round, and the moments you're not blooming aren't wasted. They're when the roots deepen, when the nutrients absorb, when the strength builds that will carry the next flowering. But you've been taught to fear the fallow seasons, to call them failure, to panic and force something, anything, to prove you're still moving. And in doing so, you interrupt the very process that would naturally carry you forward. Sacred silence is the practice of trusting the fallow, of honoring the in-between, of understanding that not every moment is meant for output. Some moments are meant for input, for rest, for integration, for becoming, and those moments aren't less valuable. They're more valuable, because they determine the quality of everything that comes next. A tree that never rests, that tries to fruit in every season, exhausts itself and produces nothing of substance. But a tree that honors its cycles, that draws inward when it's time, that lets the leaves fall and the sap slow, that tree becomes mighty, deep-rooted, resilient. And when spring comes, it doesn't just survive, it flourishes. You're not behind, you're in a necessary season. And the fact that it feels quiet doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means everything is happening beneath the surface, in the unseen, in the depths you can't measure or photograph or post about. This is where the real transformation lives. Not in the highlight reel, in the inner work, the shadow work, the sacred solitude where you finally meet yourself without the mask. Here's what happens when you commit to sacred silence. At first it's uncomfortable. The withdrawal symptoms kick in, the itch to check, to scroll, to fill the space. Your mind races, your body fidgets. You feel like you're missing something, and you are. You're missing the distraction, the numbing, the avoidance, but underneath that something else begins to stir. A knowing, a remembering, a version of you that's been waiting patiently for this exact moment. The you that isn't performing, isn't proving, isn't pretending. The you that simply is. And that version of you has been trying to get your attention for years, but you've been too busy to notice. In the silence, the noise loses its grip. The opinions that felt so urgent start to fade. The comparisons that felt so crushing start to dissolve. The fears that felt so real start to reveal themselves as mirages. Because in the absence of external validation, you're forced to find internal validation. In the absence of distraction, you're forced to face yourself, and yes, that's terrifying, but it's also liberating. Because on the other side of that terror is freedom. The freedom to choose, to create, to become. Not based on what they told you, based on what you know, deep in your bones, in the quiet, in the truth that doesn't need to be proven because it simply is. Your intuition gets louder in the silence, not because it's shouting, because you've finally stopped drowning it out. Those gut feelings you've been dismissing, they sharpen. Those creative ideas you've been ignoring, they clarify. Those decisions you've been avoiding, they simplify. Because intuition doesn't speak in paragraphs, it speaks in pulses, in sensations, in quiet knowings that arrive fully formed when you give them the space to land. But you have to create that space, you have to clear the channel. And the only way to clear the channel is to unplug from everything else and tune into yourself. This is the shift. From seeking externally to sourcing internally, from asking everyone else what you should do to trusting what you already know, from building a life that looks good to building a life that feels true. And that shift doesn't happen in the noise. It happens in the sacred silence, where you finally hear yourself think, feel yourself feel, remember yourself whole. Picture a radio trying to pick up a signal. If there's too much interference, too many frequencies fighting for space, you get static, distortion, chaos. But when you clear the interference, when you eliminate the competing signals, suddenly the station comes through crystal clear. Your soul is the station, and it's been broadcasting this whole time. The signal has always been there, but you've been surrounded by so much interference that you couldn't hear it. Every notification, every obligation, every opinion, every expectation, layer upon layer of static. Sacred silence isn't about finding the signal, it's about clearing the interference so you can finally receive what's already being transmitted. And here's the beautiful paradox. When you stop chasing, you start attracting. When you stop forcing, you start flowing. When you stop proving, you start becoming. The things you were desperately reaching for begin to come to you. Not because you manipulated the universe, because you aligned with it, because you stopped operating from lack and started operating from wholeness. And wholeness is magnetic. It doesn't need to convince. It doesn't need to perform, it simply is. And that presence, that groundedness, that inner knowing, that's what draws your next level to you. People will notice the shift before you do. They'll say you seem different, calmer, more certain, more present. They won't be able to put their finger on it, but they'll feel it, because you're no longer scattered, no longer performing, no longer grasping. You've come home to yourself, and that frequency, that energy, it changes everything. Opportunities appear, connections deepen, clarity arrives, not because you did more, because you became more aligned, more attuned, more authentic. This is what sacred silence gives you, not escape. Evolution, not isolation. Integration, not emptiness, expansion. It's the space where you shed who you thought you had to be and remember who you actually are. Where you release the borrowed dreams and reconnect with your soul's true calling. Where you stop living in reaction and start living in response. Conscious, intentional, whole. Your next level isn't out there. It's in here, in the quiet moments you've been avoiding, in the stillness you've been afraid to enter, in the solitude you've been calling loneliness, when really it's the most profound form of coming home. Because you are not alone in the silence. You're finally in the presence of the only person who's been with you through everything. The only person who knows every version of you, every dream, every wound, every truth, yourself. And that relationship, the one with yourself, is the foundation of everything else. Every other relationship in your life is a reflection of it. Every opportunity, every outcome, every experience. If you don't know yourself, you can't choose for yourself. If you don't trust yourself, you can't act on your knowing. If you don't honor yourself, you'll accept relationships and situations that dishonor you. But when you commit to sacred silence, when you prioritize that inner relationship, everything external begins to shift. Not because you controlled it, because you calibrated it. Because you started operating from your truth instead of their noise. So here's your invitation. Not to abandon the world, to remember yourself within it, to carve out moments of sacred silence, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour if you can, not as a luxury, as a necessity, as the most important meeting on your calendar, the one with your soul. Turn off the phone, close the laptop, sit with yourself, not to accomplish anything, just to be, to breathe, to listen. To let the snow globe settle, to let the static clear, to let the truth rise. At first it will feel strange, uncomfortable, maybe even painful. But stay. Don't run. Don't fill the space. Let it hold you. Let it show you what you've been avoiding. Let it reveal what you've been carrying. Let it crack you open so the light can finally get in. Because this is how transformation works. Not by adding more, by removing what was never yours to begin with, the expectations, the performances, the masks, the noise, all of it, until all that's left is essence, truth, you. And from that place, from that sacred ground, you don't have to chase your next level. It rises through you. naturally, organically, inevitably, because you've created the conditions for it. You've tilled the soil, you've planted the seed, you've watered it with presence. And now all you have to do is trust the process, trust the silence, trust the becoming. Your next level requires sacred silence, not because there's something wrong with the world, because there's something right with you that can only be accessed in the quiet. A knowing, a power, a truth. And it's been waiting for you to stop long enough to remember it. So stop. Not forever, just for a moment, for a breath, for a pause between the noise and the next chapter, because that pause isn't a delay, it's the doorway. And everything you've been searching for is on the other side. The universe doesn't reward the loudest voice. It rewards the clearest channel, and clarity doesn't come from consuming more content. It comes from creating more space. Space for insight, for integration, for your soul to finally speak without competing for airtime. This is your reminder. This is your permission. This is your invitation to stop proving and start being, to stop chasing and start receiving, to stop performing and start becoming. Sacred silence isn't the absence of something. It's the presence of everything, everything you are, everything you're meant to become, everything that's been waiting for you to finally get quiet enough to hear it. So honor it, protect it, return to it, again and again, not as an escape, but as your most important practice. Because in a world that's constantly trying to pull you away from yourself, choosing to come home is the most radical act there is. If this landed, if something in you recognized itself in these words, that's not random. That's resonance. That's your soul confirming what it already knew. And maybe you hit subscribe not for the algorithm, but as a commitment to yourself. A bookmark, a reminder, a small choice that says, yes, I'm ready to remember, because your next level isn't asking you to do more. It's asking you to be more present, more attuned, more aligned. And that begins in the one place only you can go, the sacred silence within. The cipher of inner stillness is a poetic journey through the hidden geometry of peace. Blending mystical philosophy, Jungian psychology, and cosmic symbolism, this ebook reveals that silence is not the absence of life, it is its source. Discover this and other codices that transform the way you see the universe through the link in the description.